Welcome to Nightly Peace of Mind. Tonight we step quietly into the moonlit corners of the Zen world where monks sweep temple floors with no need for praise. Teacups overflow with wisdom, and even the breeze has something to say. You find yourself beneath a pale moon, its light spilling like milk over the curved edge of a garden wall. The wind stirs the bamboo leaves with a dry, whispery sound, like silk brushing stone. Somewhere, a small bell rings, soft and irregular, as if reminding no one in particular that time is passing. You've had a long day, emails unanswered, thoughts stacked like teetering books. One more task always waiting, but none of that has followed you here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it there now? Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sitting on a stone bench just beyond the monastery walls. The night has cooled the stone beneath you, but your hands are warm around a small clay cup of roasted tea. Each breath seems longer here, drawn out by the hush that settles over everything after sunset. The monks have gone inside. The last candle flickered out in the hallway an hour ago. You can hear only the rustle of wind and your own quiet sipping. This is where your journey begins, with stillness, with night, and with a question not yet formed. The Buddha once said, "All conditioned things are impermanent when one sees this with wisdom. One turns away from suffering." The words feel old, like stones warmed by generations of sun and prayer. You look up. Above you, a plum tree reaches over the wall, its gnarled limbs dropping the occasional flower into the gravel below. A young monk once stood where you are now. Just a few generations ago, he was barely more than a boy, new to the monastery and homesick. Each night, when the chores were done and the lessons over, he would sneak to this very spot, hoping to glimpse the village lights over the garden wall. One night, the abbot found him here. Instead of scolding him, the old teacher stood silently beside him. They listened to the wind together, watching the petals drift down like forgotten snow. The abbot finally spoke. "What is it that you miss?" The boy answered, "The warmth, my mother's soup, the noise. I feel empty here." The abbot nodded, as if listening to something much older than the boy's words. "Do you see the moonlight falling on the wall?" he asked. The boy nodded. "It never arrives quickly. It only appears when night is fully night. That is how presence works. It does not rush to fill emptiness. It arrives when you are still enough to notice it." You sip your tea slowly, breathing in its roasted scent. The warmth travels through your chest, softening something in you that had been tight all day, maybe all week. You wonder, what is it I've been rushing to fill? And what would happen if I just waited, quietly, instead? In Zen, impermanence is not a tragic truth. It's a permission slip. You're not required to hold on to things that shift and drift by nature. You don't have to panic when your energy changes, when friends grow distant, when plans unravel. The wind tonight is different than it was even an hour ago, but it's still wind. You are still you, even if tonight you are softer, slower, more tired, and perhaps that's not a flaw, but a grace. You hear a soft creak of wood behind you, perhaps a door gently closing. The sound echoes faintly, then is swallowed by the stillness again. You think of how much noise you carry every day inside your own head, all the judgments, the rehearsals of imaginary conversations, the unspoken fears that play like broken records. But tonight, here in this walled garden, you've been given permission to set those burdens down, No one is asking anything of you now. There's an old Zen image. A leaf falls from a tree and lands quietly in a pond. The ripples spread, wide and soft, until they're gone. No struggle, no resistance, just a simple return to stillness. That's what this night is offering you. The Buddha once smiled quietly when someone asked him about heaven. He said, "Nirvana is the blowing out of the flame of desire." At first, that might sound bleak, like being asked to give up warmth or passion, but perhaps it's more like blowing out a candle before bed, not extinguishing life, but ending the flicker that keeps you awake. You begin to see that peace is not something to chase, it's what's left when you stop chasing. A plum blossom lands near your foot. You don't move, you just breathe and notice it. Soft, white, slightly curled from its journey down. It doesn't ask to be admired. It doesn't cling to the branch for fear of falling. It lets go, lands lightly, and rests exactly where it is. What would it mean to land lightly in your own life, to stop gripping so tightly to outcomes and expectations? Is letting go truly a loss? Or could it be the start of something more quiet, more real? Above, the moon slips behind a cloud, then reappears silver and still. You begin to feel your thoughts quiet down. They don't disappear, but they stop shouting. They begin to whisper. You don't need to fix them tonight. Just let them pass like clouds over a sleeping mountain. And if you find your attention drifting, that's fine too. Even monks fall asleep during evening meditation. One master used to walk past dozing novices and whisper, "Sleep is also part of the path." He was rarely wrong. You shift slightly on the bench. The stone is cooler now, but your body is soft and grounded. Your eyelids feel heavier. Your thoughts like petals floating in a stream. You're not trying to understand anymore. You're just here, present, like moonlight on an old wall, slow and unhurried. You linger quietly in the garden's hush. Long after the last ripple of sound has faded, the tea in your hand is finished, but the warmth still glows in your chest. It's the kind of warmth that doesn't ask for more, it simply is. You rise slowly and walk past the low wall into the monastery grounds. Each step on the gravel path clicks gently beneath your feet, like small reminders that the earth is always here to hold you. Ahead, in a side corridor lit by lanterns, a faint scent of steamed rice and sesame oil floats through the night air. You follow the smell not out of hunger, but curiosity. There's a room where late-night meals are sometimes prepared for travelers or monks returning from pilgrimage. You slip inside and find a single bowl waiting on the table. The rice is warm, fresh, and plain. No garnish, no sides, just rice, in a smooth wooden bowl, placed with the kind of care that turns an ordinary moment into a small ceremony. This was once how a revered Zen nun, old and mostly blind, welcomed visitors. She would say nothing, just offer them a single bowl of rice, steaming and simple. Many would sit across from her expecting a Dharma talk, or a long story, or even a question, but there was only the bowl, only the rice, only the act of receiving. The Buddha once taught, "If beings knew as I know the results of giving and sharing, they would not let a single meal pass without sharing it." You feel that teaching in your hands now as you touch the smooth lip of the bowl. Giving does not always mean grand gestures. Sometimes it means being fully present with what you already have. A bowl, a breath, a moment shared in silence. You sit down and take a bite. The texture is soft and slightly sticky. There's a fullness to it that doesn't come from flavor. It comes from awareness. How often have you eaten in a rush? with a phone in one hand and your mind 1,000 miles away. But here, tonight, the rice is all there is. You chew slowly, thoughtfully, grateful even for the way your tongue recognizes its warmth. A story stirs in your memory, one you heard once at a temple in a dusty countryside. A novice monk, new and full of ambition, approached his teacher during mealtime. "Master," he asked, "when will I understand the way?" The teacher took a bite of rice and smiled. "When you eat, just eat." The novice frowned. "I mean really understand. When will I become enlightened?" The teacher pointed at the rice. "When this is no longer just rice, and yet still only rice, then you'll understand." The young monk didn't get it then, and that's okay. Neither do most of us the first time, or the second. But maybe tonight, you begin to glimpse what the teacher meant, that enlightenment isn't always found in silence under trees or visions in caves. Sometimes, it's here in a bite, a breath, a bowl placed before you with quiet care. A moth flutters near the lantern above you, wings brushing the paper shade. It casts a wobbly shadow that dances on the wall like a soft, flickering cone. You wonder how much simpler life would feel if you approached it one bite at a time, if you stopped trying to multitask your way through dinner, your emotions, your relationships. What if you let each moment feed you fully before moving to the next? You remember a woman from the village, a widow who came each week to donate rice to the temple. She'd lost everything in a storm years ago. Her home, her husband, her crops. Yet each month, she brought what little she had, wrapped in cloth. "Rice tastes better when someone else has enough too," she would say with a smile that wrinkled the corners of her eyes. No sermon, no chants, just a giving heart. As you continue eating, slowly, a sense of groundedness settles into your bones. There's something sacred about doing just one thing well, not perfectly, just wholly, entirely, completely present, like the way birds perch without fidgeting, like the way old stones sit in the stream without asking for meaning. Tonight's teaching isn't about renouncing the world or achieving spiritual fireworks. It's about noticing the quiet dignity in a simple meal, about how the ordinary becomes extraordinary the moment you offer it your full attention. What is one thing in your life, small, overlooked, daily, that you could return to with reverence? Could it be brushing your teeth as if cleansing a sacred statue, folding your clothes as though tucking in a beloved child, pouring tea as if to calm the entire world? Another breeze drifts through the open door, and with it the faint rustle of the trees outside. You feel full now, not just from the food, but from the stillness it brought with it, a fullness not of the stomach, but of the spirit. The lantern flickers once, twice, and steadies. You take one last glance at the now empty bowl. There's no urge to wash it right away. Let it rest. Let the moment settle like the final grains at the bottom. You walk back outside into the night. The gravel underfoot feels familiar now. Grounding. The stars above blink in quiet formation. Tiny bowls of light holding something unnameable. You exhale slowly, not to let go of anything in particular, but just because it feels good to breathe without hurry. The moon is higher now, and the plum blossoms have scattered more widely across the path. A few have landed on the stone bench where you first sat. You smile. Everything changes, even in the space of a bowl of rice. And so, you ask yourself, if the simplest meal can nourish the soul, what else have I overlooked that might be sacred too? The night deepens, wrapping its cool arms gently around the monastery. You walk slowly now. your senses softened by tea and rice and silence. Gravel crunches beneath your feet with each step, but you no longer try to step quietly. You are simply walking. And that is enough. A quiet breeze moves through the corridor, carrying the scent of cedar and faint traces of incense that linger like forgotten prayers in the corners. Ahead, the path leads you to the guest quarters, where worn wooden floors and paper walls hold more stories than can ever be told. You slide open the door to your room. Inside, a small futon waits near the far wall, beside a single candle still flickering with quiet patience. As you sit, cross-legged on the cushion, you hear it thump, then silence, then again thump. It takes you a moment to recognize the sound, a single shoe falling on the floor above you. A moment passes, and your mind fills the space with expectation. Surely, the second shoe will drop soon. You wait, you listen. But it never comes. There's a quiet teaching in this moment, one that sneaks in through the back door of your attention. That first shoe, like a thought or a memory, lands with force. It draws you in, but then comes the waiting. The mind leans forward, hanging on for what's next, certain that something must follow. When nothing does, the silence becomes louder than the sound. This is how much of life unfolds. A text message without a reply, a meeting that ends with no closure, a compliment that carries a shadow. You're trained to expect completion, to brace for the next part, and in doing so, you miss the strange, shimmering peace that can exist in the unspoken. A wandering monk once stayed at this very monastery. He had traveled across 3 countries and 1 ocean, hoping to find a teacher who could help him quiet his turbulent mind. But after weeks of silence and chores, he grew restless. "The master has given me no teachings," he said one evening to an old lay attendant. The attendant smiled and said, "What did you hear this morning when the master poured water into his bowl?" The monk furrowed his brow. "Just water. And yesterday, when you fell asleep during chanting, what woke you up?" "The bell." "Yes," the attendant said. "And what has followed you through all of it?" The monk paused. "I don't know. The silence between," said the attendant. "That is the teaching." The Buddha once spoke of vitakka vikara, the continual movement of the thinking mind, thoughts landing, circling, waiting for the next thought. But freedom comes when you stop grasping at the second shoe, when you let the first sound be just itself and leave space for stillness after. You lie back now, arms resting gently at your sides, your eyes half closed. Somewhere above, the person who dropped that shoe has fallen asleep. Perhaps they, too, were waiting for the second one, and now dream of something unrelated, a mountain path, a lost friend, a bowl of soup from long ago. You allow your mind to do the same, not to find conclusions, but to float gently in the space between, like the way a leaf hovers just before it lands, or how your breath pauses at the top before releasing. You think of the time you were stuck waiting for a response that never came, a job offer, a message, a gesture of love. It gnawed at you for weeks, and yet, in the space where nothing happened, you eventually found clarity, not because of what did arrive, but because of what didn't. Sometimes, peace lives in what never came. There's a teaching in Zen: don't seek the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. It sounds paradoxical, maybe even frustrating, but it points to a gentler way of being. If you stop grasping for endings, for confirmations, for the other shoe to drop, you begin to float, not aimlessly, but lightly untethered from the demands of certainty. Outside your room, a breeze flutters the rice paper wall. You hear the faint chirp of a night insect in the rafters. Nothing extraordinary, nothing grand, and yet it feels complete. You wonder now, how much of my stress comes not from what is, but from what I'm expecting next? It's a soft question, one that doesn't need an answer right away. You can just let it drift through your awareness like smoke from incense fragrant, curling, dissolving. Another parable comes to mind. A young Zen student approached his teacher in the dark of early morning. "I had a dream last night," he said. "I was holding a string, and at the end was a kite, soaring, but suddenly, I let go. The kite vanished." The master looked at him and smiled faintly. "Ah," he said, "you let go of the string, but did you let go of the sky?" You smile now, feeling the comfort in that question. Even if the second shoe never drops, even if the email never comes, even if the answer never arrives, perhaps the sky remains, the openness, the vastness, the space where new things can emerge or not. You turn your head slightly, listening, still no second shoe, still no closure, and oddly enough, that's okay. You no longer need it. What you needed, perhaps, was this quiet between the sound of not sound, the relief of not knowing, the permission to not hold your breath. You close your eyes fully now, letting the darkness wrap around you like a familiar blanket. The teachings tonight haven't arrived with loud footsteps or grand declarations. They've come in rice, in breath, in a single shoe falling and nothing more. You breathe in again, long and deep, and feel the gentle pause at the top. There it is again, that space, that silence, that hidden jewel between sound and sleep. Maybe, just maybe, that's the part where your mind begins to loosen, your heart begins to rest. You wake before the light fully changes, not startled, but stirred like a leaf drifting to the top of still water. The room holds that particular hush just before dawn, when everything is breathing but nothing has spoken yet. You sit up slowly, noticing the faint glow beyond the paper window. Outside, the wind has shifted. You hear the whisper of movement, but it's not the dry sound of leaves. It's water, a stream, perhaps, or maybe something larger, drawn by curiosity more than plan. You rise, wrap yourself in a light robe, and step barefoot onto the wooden walkway. Following the breeze, you reach the monastery's outer gate, where a narrow path winds through the forest. Mist clings to the trees, curling around branches like a careful thought that hasn't quite formed. You walk slowly, the coolness of stone and moss underfoot reminding you that you're alive, awake, and here. Then, just past a bend, you see it. The river, wide and slow, like time made liquid, and along its edge, dozens of floating lanterns, soft orbs of golden light, bobbing gently on the current, like sleepy stars who've forgotten their place in the sky. You've wandered into a lantern ceremony. Though no one else is here, perhaps the monks launched them earlier, or perhaps they've always been drifting, waiting for you to notice. Each lantern carries a slip of paper inside, a tiny wish or remembrance. Some glow brighter than others, some spin slightly, some have drifted toward the edge, caught by reeds, not quite ready to move on. You crouch near the bank and watch in silence. The image is simple but full, soft light, flowing water, quiet motion. This, too, is a teaching. Long ago, A lay practitioner visited a mountain temple and spoke to a nun who was known for her deep understanding of loss. "I cannot let go of the people I've lost." He confessed, "They remain in my mind like a chorus, always singing, always just beyond my reach." The nun said nothing at first. She handed him a lantern and motioned toward the river. "This will not erase your grief," she said gently, "but it may teach you how to hold it." He lit the candle, placed a slip of paper inside, and watched it float. The river did not rush. It didn't snatch his sorrow away. It carried it softly, respectfully, into the wider night. The Buddha once said, "You can only lose what you cling to," but Zen, ever subtle, doesn't demand that you stop clinging instantly. It invites you to see the clinging, to hold it up to the moonlight, to honor it, and when the time is right, to place it on the water and watch it drift. You sit by the edge now, knees tucked to your chest, feeling your own memories rise, not as sharp pain, but as flickers faces, voices, old laughter that echoes inside you like the sound of a familiar instrument in another room. You wonder, what would I place inside my lantern? Is it grief? A regret? A version of yourself you're still trying to forgive? There's a stillness in the act of watching. You don't need to act, just witness. Just be here with the river, with the lanterns, with whatever drifts up inside you. Somewhere upstream, a soft splash interrupts the rhythm. Perhaps a fish, perhaps another lantern newly released. You smile faintly. The river doesn't differentiate between old and new, sorrow and joy. It carries everything with the same gentle current. A story comes to mind, told by a monk whose brother had passed away many years ago. At first, he said, "I thought the point was to stop hurting, but over time I learned the point was to hurt mindfully, to feel the ache without becoming it, like standing in the rain without pretending it's dry." You nod, understanding now why the ceremony uses fire and water together, opposites that meet in peace. Fire transforms, water carries. Together, they make memory into motion. Another lantern drifts by, and you notice the slip of paper inside has come loose, soaked and unreadable. And yet, the light continues to glow. You wonder, is letting go the same as forgetting? Or is it simply choosing to release what no longer needs to be held so tightly? You take a long, slow breath, the kind that fills every corner of your lungs before easing out through relaxed lips. The mist is lifting now, the sky turning from indigo to slate blue. Somewhere behind you, the temple bell will soon ring to welcome the new day. But for now, you are still by the river, still watching the light drift slowly into the unknown. And in this moment, you are not worried about what comes next, not reaching for answers, not replaying stories. You are simply a witness to beauty and transience, a lantern yourself, glowing softly on the current of time. The teaching tonight isn't complicated. It doesn't require memorization or study. Just this: you are allowed to remember. Without reliving, you are allowed to release. Without erasing, you are allowed to love, even after goodbye. The last lantern you see carries no paper at all, just light. Perhaps that's the point. It was always trying to reach, not to carry anything, but to simply be. You rise slowly, your body gently cooled by the morning breeze, your steps soft and measured as you return to the path. Each leaf on the ground shines slightly with dew, tiny mirrors reflecting the sky above. As you walk, you notice how your own breath flows now like the river, smooth, unforced, carrying something you can't quite name, but no longer feel the need to. The sky has begun to lighten fully now, Stretching into soft tones of pale gold and muted rose, you walk slowly through the monastery gardens, gravel shifting gently beneath your feet like the rustle of old parchment. The world is waking, but not abruptly. It stirs like a child reluctant to leave dreams. The trees sigh, the birds speak in murmurs, even the breeze seems to tiptoe through the bamboo. You follow your breath, each inhale smoother, longer, more generous than the last. Your steps bring you near the communal tea house, a low, wood-framed structure tucked between two plum trees. Its sliding door is slightly ajar, as if inviting you in but offering no pressure. You step over the threshold, the wooden floor warm from the rising sun, and inside you see her, an old woman, her hair tucked neatly beneath a white scarf, sits kneeling beside a kettle. She doesn't acknowledge you at first, not out of rudeness, but because her attention is fully on the water just beginning to steam. You feel no need to speak. Her presence is as calming as the hush before a snowfall. She lifts a ladle and pours hot water into a single cup, places a small scoop of roasted leaves inside, and lets it steep. The aroma fills the room, earthy, nutty, and faintly sweet. She looks up, then, meeting your eyes with the kind of gaze that doesn't search or question, it simply sees. Why? She nods toward the cup. You kneel. The first sip is hot, too hot. Your lips flinch. Your tongue protests. She notices and smiles not unkindly, but knowingly. Too eager, she says gently. The tea teaches you to wait. She turns back to the kettle. The young monk who once lived here burned his tongue every morning for a month. She continues. Finally, one day, he set the cup down and simply waited. The next morning, I told him he had passed his first test. You smile, understanding the lesson before she explains it. Some things aren't meant to be rushed. The tea needs time. So does the breath. So does healing. So does insight. The Buddha once said, as a fletcher straightens an arrow, so the wise straighten their minds. And like arrows, minds don't bend instantly. They must be heated, softened, and shaped slowly, with patience, with care, with repeated practice. The tea cools. You take another sip this time. Smooth, deep, and satisfying. The flavor unfurls like a memory long held in the body, not dramatic, not flashy, just right. There's a story the old woman shares, spoken with the rhythm of someone who has said it many times but still loves the telling. A student asked a master, "How long until I am wise?" The master replied, 10 years, and if I try very hard, 20 years, and if I study day and night, every moment, 30 years. She chuckles, the lines around her mouth deepening like river channels. Impatience is the favorite snack of the ego, she says. It chews on what could be instead of savoring what is. You let her words rest in your mind like leaves on warm water. No urgency, no analysis, just presence. There's something about being served tea by someone who's lived long and loved deeply. She doesn't fill the space with talk. She lets the silence do its own work. Outside, a sparrow hops onto the windowsill, peering in as if checking the progress of your transformation. You glance at the kettle still full, still warm, still not boiling. Not everything has to reach a climax. Sometimes it's enough to stay just below the boil, where the essence of life steeps best. You think of your own life, how often you've burned your tongue on moments you were too eager to taste, speaking before listening, deciding before resting, pushing before simply sitting. A question forms in your mind, like steam above the cup. What have I rushed through lately that needed more stillness, more softness, more space to unfold? You don't need an answer now. The question is enough. The old woman rises and walks slowly to a cabinet. Retrieving a single rice cracker, she sets it next to your tea. The gesture so simple and deliberate it feels ceremonial. "There's no need to speak," she says, "but if you wish, the tea will listen." You nod, and between sips, you begin to whisper not with your voice, but with your attention. Each thought offered to the tea, each breath slower than the last. You say nothing aloud, but your body sighs with relief. In this moment, time has loosened its grip. You are no longer sprinting from one idea to the next, no longer calculating, strategizing, or comparing. You are simply here, with heat, and flavor, and presence, and maybe that's all wisdom is choosing to taste rather than chase. Outside, the sparrow flies off. Satisfied with your progress, the old woman refills your cup with a slight tilt of her head. Approval, perhaps, or maybe just kindness. She says one last thing before you stand to leave. The tea is never wrong. It's just sometimes early. You bow, deeply, not because she demands it, but because something inside you has shifted, not dramatically, not suddenly, but like tea cooling, like breath deepening, like a heart finding its own rhythm again. You step out into the brightening morning, sunlight now dripping through the trees like gold through a sieve. The day awaits, but you don't hurry toward it. You walk slowly, letting the heat of the tea stay with you, a quiet ember of patience glowing at your center. And in your mind, a question lingers gently, like steam from a forgotten cup. Can waiting be a form of love? The warmth of the tea still hums gently in your belly as you make your way through the monastery grounds. The early sun dapples the path through the trees, its light broken by branches and bamboo leaves that sway with the breeze like green prayer flags. Every now and then, the wind rises not wildly, but with a purposeful sweep, as if brushing dust from the corners of the world. You follow the sound until it leads you to a courtyard. There, a small child, perhaps no more than 7 or 8 years old, moves slowly across the stone tiles with a broom twice her height. She's sweeping the leaves, though more often they scatter than gather. Her strokes are not strong or orderly, and the breeze seems to tease her by undoing her progress just as she makes it. She pauses and looks up at you, offering a small smile. Unbothered by her lack of success, you nod, stepping closer, watching as she bends again to sweep the same leaf for the 3rd time. Her movements are calm, almost playful, as though she understands something deeper than most grown minds allow. A senior monk once told a story about such a child. Long ago, during a stormy autumn, the abbot noticed a boy sweeping the courtyard long after the rain had passed. "Why continue?" the abbot asked. "The wind will only scatter more leaves." The boy looked up and said, "Yes, but I am not sweeping to finish. I am sweeping to sweep." The Buddha spoke of viriya, right effort, as part of the Eightfold Path. But effort in the Buddhist sense is not struggle or striving. It's not gritting your teeth or muscling through discomfort. It is quiet, steady energy like water smoothing stone, or a child with a broom, undeterred by swirling winds. You sit on the stone steps and watch. The child hums softly, a tune you don't recognize, but which fits perfectly with the rhythm of the sweeping. In a world obsessed with results, here is a master of process. Each sweep is complete in itself, each moment held like a jewel before it's set gently back down. You remember a day not long ago, perhaps last week or last month, when you felt overwhelmed by your own to-do list. tasks piled up like fallen leaves, each one whispering that you were behind. Not enough. Always catching up. You rushed through them, hoping that speed might bring relief, but the faster you moved, the more scattered things became. What if, like the child, you had swept simply to sweep? A leaf lands near your foot, not fallen, exactly drifted, like it chose this particular spot. You don't move, you just watch as it spins once, twice, and comes to rest. The wind picks up again, rustling through the bamboo with a sound like distant applause, and the leaves on the ground shift slightly, not enough to matter, not enough to undo. The child looks up again. It never stays clean, she says, almost laughing. Is that frustrating, you ask? She shrugs. Only if I want it to stay clean. Then she returns to her work, sweeping another small cluster of leaves into a shallow pile that the wind will likely scatter again within minutes. You wonder, how often do I fight the wind, rather than move with it? There's a koan that reads, "The flag is not moving. The wind is not moving. The mind is moving." It sounds confusing at first, but you start to feel its meaning now. The wind doesn't mean to undo the work. The leaves don't fall out of spite. They are just being what they are. It is your mind that insists something must be finished, tidy, done. The child pauses her sweeping and points toward the sky. Look, she says. A few leaves are spiraling down from a high tree, caught in a swirling draft that carries them in a slow circle before they land. She watches without trying to catch them, just watches. Then she returns to her sweeping. That is Zen. To witness without grasping, to act without demanding reward, to participate in life as it is, not as you wish it to be. You let her image settle into your mind, broom in hand, feet bare, breath easy, joy untouched by outcome. A breeze brushes your cheek, gentle and full of scent, fresh grass, old bark, maybe even plum blossom carried from another part of the monastery. The wind is not your enemy. It is your teacher, and it has no interest in whether the courtyard stays clean. It only wants to move, to dance, to teach you the impermanence of all your careful arrangements. You feel something loosen inside you, a knot of pressure you didn't realize had been there all along. It unravels, not because of some great revelation, but because a child showed you how to be with what is, not what should be, not what was, just what is. The Buddha said, drop by drop, the water pot is filled. Each sweep of the broom, each breath you take, each moment you resist rushing through, they all matter, not because they change the world, but because they change your relationship to it. You rise to your feet slowly, stretching your spine, and bow your head slightly in thanks. The child gives a small wave, then goes on sweeping. You leave the courtyard lighter, not because the path is clearer, but because you are no longer demanding it to be. And as you walk, the wind lifts a few more leaves around your ankles, playful now, almost loving. You don't try to stop them. You don't gather them up. You just walk, and in doing so, you sweep the path in your own quiet way. You carry a new question with you, as soft as a breath, as steady as a child's hand on a broom. Is surrender truly weakness, or could it be the highest form of strength? The breeze continues to guide your path, and you follow it not with urgency, but with the same patient attention the child had in her sweeping. The monastery has fully awakened now, though it makes no fuss about it. Birds call softly from the trees, wooden chimes clink in slow rhythms, and far off, you hear the low, steady beating of a drum, marking the hour. Time moves here, but not like in the world beyond these gates. It does not chase, It drifts. You find yourself drawn uphill, past the herb garden and the stone pagoda, where the moss grows thick and spongy under your feet. The path narrows, winding between tall cedar trees, and then opens to a small clearing near a cliff's edge. A bench carved from a single piece of wood waits beneath a gnarled pine, overlooking the valley below, and above it all, clouds. Not stormy or dramatic, just large, slow-moving, and soft-edged. They hover in gentle procession across the sky, casting shadows on the hills like watercolor stains. They move with no schedule, no destination, no concern for the human need to measure and plan. You sit and watch, lulled by their drifting dance. A monk once said, "To understand Zen, observe the clouds." You thought he was being poetic. Now, you're not so sure. The Buddha taught, just as the great rivers flow to the ocean, abandoning their names and forms, so must the wise let go of clinging to identity. And like rivers, like clouds, you feel the edges of yourself soften in this open space. You are not your to-do list here, not your role, your title, your calendar. You are breath. You are watching. You are cloud-like. You think about how much you hurry in your regular life. Even during rest, you're calculating how long until the next thing. How productive was this hour? Even in meditation, you might catch yourself wondering if you're doing it right. But clouds do not ask if they are enough. They do not hurry across the sky hoping to be somewhere better. They drift, and in doing so, they teach you the difference between movement and rushing. A story surfaces one about a laywoman known as White Orchid, who lived alone in the hills and practiced in silence. A visitor once asked her, "How do you pass the time in solitude?" She looked toward the sky and said, "I watch the clouds. When they pass, I smile. When they stay, I smile. There is nothing in them to fix, and nothing in me that resists them." You smile at the memory, not because it's profound, but because it's true. You watch one cloud that looks vaguely like a sleeping animal. It stretches, changes shape, then melts into the next. There is no tragedy in its fading, no drama. It just becomes something else. You reflect on how often you've fought change gripped tightly to a version of life that was already shifting, a job you'd outgrown, a relationship that no longer mirrored who you were becoming, a dream that once lit you up, but now feels like someone else's. And yet, you clung because letting go felt like failure. But now you ask yourself, is letting go really a loss? Or could it be the beginning of something softer, slower, freer? The clouds offer no answer. They just keep moving. A wind rises from the valley, cool and smooth, lifting the hem of your robe and stirring the pine needles overhead. You feel the breath of the world pass through you, not separate from it, but part of it, like a note in a song, a leaf in a current, a cloud in an infinite sky. There's an old tale of a monk who stood still for an entire day, watching clouds roll past a distant mountain. When his fellow monks asked what he had learned, he said only, "They refused to hurry, and I was healed." You close your eyes and breathe. There's no need to watch the sky now. You can feel the clouds inside you gentle, formless thoughts drifting across your awareness. You let them come. You let them go. One thought floats in, "I should be doing more." It passes. Another arises. What comes next? You smile and let it drift too. This moment is enough. You, sitting here with no agenda, are enough. You open your eyes again and see the clouds now bathed in morning light, their edges glowing faint gold, One resembles an open hand, another, the curve of a wave, but soon they shift. 2. You begin to trust that nothing beautiful is meant to last in one form, and that doesn't make it less beautiful. If anything, it makes it sacred. You rise from the bench slowly, the way a cloud might rise off a hilltop after dawn. There's no rush. The world isn't asking anything of you right now. Not answers, not performance, just attention, just presence. As you walk back down the path, your pace is slower than before, not because you're tired, but because there's no need to be fast. The clouds didn't hurry, and they reached everywhere. You ask yourself a quiet question, one that feels less like a problem to solve and more like a lantern to carry. What would life feel like if I trusted in slow arrival? The path brings you gently downhill, winding like thought through memory. You pass beneath an arching cedar, its branches bowing low, and beyond it, the air shifts again, cooler now, with the faintest scent of sandalwood and stone. There's a hush here, not just quiet, but a deeper kind of stillness, as though sound itself is kneeling. You know this part of the monastery, the old garden where the teachers sit when they have nothing left to say. You step inside and see him, the master. He is older than the buildings themselves. It seems his face is carved with lines that suggest he once smiled often, though now he rarely does, but not out of coldness, more like he has returned the smile inward, to some quiet place that never needs to be seen. He sits cross-legged on a wooden platform beneath the shade of a persimmon tree, eyes open but not searching. There is no cushion, no scroll, no incense burning, only his presence, like a mountain that forgot it was a mountain and simply became still. You approach slowly, aware that you are stepping into sacred space not because it's marked as such, but because it feels like a held breath. You bow. He nods, but says nothing. You sit across from him, mirroring his posture as best you can. The wood beneath you is warm. A fly buzzes once, then disappears. You wait. Nothing. Still. Nothing. And then more nothing. No story, no question, no wise words. He is simply here, and so are you. This is the lesson. The Buddha once said, "Silence is an answer." At the time, perhaps you read it and wondered what it meant, but now, here in the presence of this kind old silence, you begin to understand, not intellectually, but with your skin, with your breath. A story from centuries past floats to the surface of your mind, of a student who asked their master to explain the Dharma. The master raised one finger. The student blinked. Confused, the master lowered it. The student understood. Words often point toward truth, but silence is the truth itself. You begin to notice things you hadn't, the way the sunlight filters through the persimmon leaves above, dappled like a tiger's coat, the sound of your own breath, the slight creak of the platform wood as you shift your weight, all of it so alive, so whole was here before words ever touched it. The master's eyes meet yours for a moment. They hold you gently, like a stone warmed in the palm, not judging, not probing, just seeing. Then they return to stillness. You realize he's not trying to teach you anything. That, perhaps, is the deepest teaching of all. It's strange how hard it is to be quiet together, even with friends. Silences get filled with jokes, questions, reassurances, as if emptiness must be patched up with words. But here, the silence is a full bowl, not an empty one. You don't want to escape it. You want to sit in it forever, as though you've finally remembered something you didn't know you'd forgotten. There is a Zen koan that asks, without speaking, without silence, how do you express the truth? It seems impossible, but maybe truth doesn't need expressing. Maybe it just needs witnessing. A leaf falls gently between you. It lands without fuss, without applause. Neither of you move. You wonder now, how much do I speak just to be heard? And what might happen if I simply listened fully and with no intention to reply? The wind picks up, brushes the master's robe, and moves on. There's a story about a wandering nun who visited a temple known for its debates. Each day, monks would gather and challenge one another on points of doctrine. But when she arrived, she said nothing. She simply swept the steps, day after day. When asked what she believed, she pointed to the broom and smiled. Some scoffed, others stared, but one young monk began to sweep beside her. And in that silence, he discovered the teachings his books had never given him. You sit with the master a while longer. He never speaks. You begin to understand that he has no answers for you, only space. And that space is more generous than any advice could ever be. Eventually, he nods again, not as a dismissal, but as a soft acknowledgement. You've seen it, you've tasted it, and now you carry it with you. You bow again, deeper this time, and rise. As you walk away from the garden, you feel not empty, but light, as though the silence didn't take anything from you. It gave something back. The noise inside you has settled, not gone, just quieter, like ripples smoothing on a pond after the pebble has sunk. The birds have returned to their songs, and the world resumes its movement, but something has shifted. You now know how to find stillness that speaks louder than words. You walk slowly through the corridor, one hand trailing along the wooden beam. A soft question floats in like incense smoke. What happens when I stop trying to be profound and just become present? The soft hush of the master's garden lingers with you like the warmth left behind by a hand that's just been held. You walk gently now, feet landing with the kind of care that only comes after stillness has worked its quiet alchemy. The wind is back, gentle but steady, and it leads you down a path you haven't noticed before, lined with moss-covered stones and draped in vines. It seems to know exactly where you need to go, even if you don't. The trees thin out as the path opens into a clearing framed by low, curling hills. There, sitting beneath a small red maple tree, is a man who doesn't quite look like a monk. His robe is simple but faded, his sandals mismatched, and his eyes carry a shimmer of light that speaks of long roads and longer silences. Beside him is a bundle wrapped in cloth, and in his palm, 3 small, smooth pebbles. He smiles as you approach, the kind of smile that doesn't push or pull, just receives. "I've been saving these," he says, and offers one to you. You take it, noticing its weight light but present, like a reminder for the mind, he says softly. You sit across from him, the pebble in your palm, warm from his hand, one for the breath. He continues, placing the second pebble into his own lap, one for the body. The third pebble he presses gently to his heart, and one for the mystery that carries both. The Buddha taught, there is nothing more important than mindfulness. Train your mind to dwell in the present moment, and these pebbles, so simple, so unassuming, have become teachers in disguise. The traveler begins to speak, not with urgency, but with the relaxed cadence of someone who knows time will wait for stories that matter. "I used to carry too much," he says, regret, fear, opinions, what people thought of me, what I thought of myself. Then, one morning, I sat beside a river and realized my hands were always full. No wonder I couldn't hold peace. He looks down at his bundle and laughs softly, so I let things go, slowly, like one would let sand slip through fingers. Then I found these pebbles, ordinary ones. I began using them to train my attention. Whenever I felt my mind scatter, I would touch one, come back to my breath, come back to my body, come back to this moment. He pauses. I've lost count of how many thoughts I've had since then, but not one has been heavier than these three. You sit with your own pebble and feel its texture against your palm, cool, round, grounded. There is nothing particularly magical about it, and yet, as you close your fingers around it, something inside you slows. You become aware of your breath again, how it rises and falls like a tide. You notice your spine, the way it gently curves in rest. You feel the ground beneath you solid, ancient, steady. The traveler gently places his 3 pebbles back into his cloth pouch and looks toward the hills. I met a young man once, he says, who asked me if mindfulness would fix his life. I told him no, but it would stop him from missing it. You smile at that because somewhere deep in you, it rings true. There's a tale he tells next, one from the far eastern provinces. A widow, living alone, began placing stones in her apron pocket each morning, one for joy, one for grief, and one for the unknown. Every evening, she would hold each one, thank it, and place it back. This, she said, was how she remembered to honor each day without needing to understand it. You wonder what you might carry in your pocket, what weight would feel sacred instead of burdensome. You stay in silence for a while, holding your pebble, letting your thoughts rise and fall without needing to chase them. A bird lands nearby, pecks at the ground, then flutters off, unconcerned. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings, not urgent, just present. Eventually, the traveler speaks again. You won't need the pebble forever, he says. One day, you'll forget to use it, and that will be okay, because the point is not to depend on the pebble. The point is to remember that you already have everything it points to. He offers the other 2 pebbles, and you take them one at a time. One rests at your belly, just beneath your hands. You breathe. The second, you press gently to your chest. You feel your heartbeat, a soft, steady drum reminding you that you are still here. And the third you ask. He smiles. That one you don't hold. You let it hold you. You let your eyes close for a moment, feeling the 3 touch points of awareness: breath, body, being. The pebbles are real, but what they offer is something deeper, a practice of remembering, of returning, of softening the grip on what never stays anyway. When you open your eyes again, the traveler has stood. His bundle is tied once more, and he slings it over one shoulder. He doesn't bow or say goodbye. He just nods and walks off toward the curve of the hill, where the path disappears into golden grasses. He walks like someone who has nowhere to be, but still knows exactly where he's going. You sit a while longer, your 3 pebbles lined up before you like quiet friends. There is no rush now, no pressure to learn anything, fix anything, or even label what just happened. There is only the stillness and the question it leaves behind. What am I really carrying, and what would happen if I let some of it down? The morning stretches its limbs as you rise once more. The 3 pebbles tucked carefully into your sleeve pocket. They're barely noticeable now, but something in their presence anchors you like gentle reminders whispering, "Come back." As you walk, the landscape shifts again. The gentle breeze becomes stiller. the light brighter, and the sky clears to a soft blue. Your feet guide you along a worn stone path toward the eastern wing of the monastery, where the meditation hall sits. Its presence is humble. Weathered wooden beams, paper walls touched with time, but it radiates a kind of inner glow, as though it's not the building but the centuries of stillness inside that give it shape. You step through the open doors and find it nearly empty, save for a few neatly arranged cushions and an old tabby cat curled at the base of the altar. She lifts her head briefly at your arrival, then closes her eyes again, utterly uninterested in your presence. Her contentment is complete. You take a cushion near the back and settle in. The room smells faintly of pine, incense, and the softness of old wood. Silence here feels different, not the absence of sound, but the fullness of attention. And then, from the corner of the room, a figure moves the meditation hall keeper. A young monk with kind eyes and a slightly crooked robe steps forward. He lights a single candle at the altar, then turns toward you and offers a short bow. Tonight, he says, we will sit with a question that has no answer. He smiles as if letting you in on a joke, then returns to his cushion. You sit up straighter. The Buddha once said, with our thoughts, we make the world, and Zen has made an art of unmaking it again through paradox, silence, and what's known as the koan, a riddle that cannot be solved through logic, only through presence. The candle flickers gently, the cat stretches, then settles again, and the koan arrives. A monk asked, "What is Buddha?" The master replied, "A cat is sleeping in the sun." You try to hold the meaning in your mind, like water in cupped hands, but it slips through. And that, perhaps, is the point. The cat shifts slightly, her tail flicking. Is she the Buddha, or is the Buddha the act of seeing her, of being here for this moment with full awareness? The more you reach, the farther the meaning drifts. A story surfaces from memory. A monk once demanded from his teacher, "Tell me the secret of Zen." The teacher picked up his staff and pointed to the sky. "Do you see that cloud?" "Yes," said the monk. "It's gone," the teacher said, and he walked away. You smile. The young monk at the front speaks again, though softly, as if addressing the silence more than the people. Koans aren't meant to be answered. He says, they are meant to wear down the part of you that always wants to answer. He tilts his head. When you stop trying to solve the candle, it will light you. You close your eyes, sitting now in that delicate space where breath moves slowly and thoughts pass like birds noticed, but not fed. The koan stays with you, a cat, sleeping, in the sun, nothing spiritual looking, nothing profound, just that. The cat purrs once, low and steady. The sound vibrates into your chest. Perhaps the truest wisdom is the most ordinary. You recall how often you've overlooked these moments in search of something greater, how you've searched for enlightenment in books, podcasts, goals, retreats. Meanwhile, the Buddha might be napping next to you on the floor, shedding fur and dreaming of fish. You open your eyes. The candle has melted a bit, wax pooling into the small tray below. Light dances on the paper walls, and still, the koan returns. A cat is sleeping in the sun. A deeper breath moves through you. You're not thinking your way through the koan now. You're being with it, letting it hold you instead of the other way around. You begin to realize that the question was never, "What is Buddha?" The real question might be, Can I stop needing to know? The monk rises again, bows to the altar, and blows out the candle. A curl of smoke sways and spirals upward, then disappears. You don't need words to feel the closing of the session. Everyone remains seated, silent, steeped in something deeper than comprehension. Even the cat, now fully asleep, is part of the teaching. You rise quietly, bow to the space, and step outside. The hallway greets you with late morning light, warm and golden, casting long stripes across the wooden floor. You walk slowly, your shadow stretching beside you like a soft companion. The cat's image stays in your mind not because she held the answer, but because she didn't need one. She just was. As you move through the corridor, the question lingers in your breath, like incense. Is wisdom found in knowing, or in not needing to know at all? The corridor opens again into sunlight, and you step out into the soft breath of midday. The air is warm now, but not heavy, carried on a breeze that's gentle enough to feel like kindness. You walk past a row of stone lanterns, each one moss-covered, stoic, as though they too have taken a vow of silence. Beyond them, the path curves toward a small hill, where the monastery's garden meets the outer fields. There, perched on the edge of a low wall, you see them sparrows, dozens of them, darting, chirping, hopping from branch to branch, flitting up to the rooftop and back down again. They move without hesitation, without shame, without any of the awkward self-consciousness you felt in your own skin so many times. One in particular catches your attention. It tilts its head and regards you for a moment before bursting upward in a wild, joyful flight. You find yourself smiling. They make no apology for flying, and in that, you hear a teaching. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." But how often do you forget that? How often do you shrink, hesitate, explain yourself, tone yourself down, afraid of being too much or not enough? The sparrow doesn't pause to consider if its song is welcome. It sings because that is what sparrows do. A nun who lived in the mountains once told a story of how she came to peace with her voice. As a child, she was loud, curious, always questioning, but each time she spoke, adults scolded her for interrupting, for being too intense. "Quiet girls are good girls," they said, so she learned silence, not the sacred kind, but the shamed kind. Years later, she joined a temple and spent her days scrubbing floors and whispering sutras with the others, until one morning, during chanting, her voice cracked and rang out above the others. It wasn't planned, it wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The abbot, an old woman with eyes like winter sky, turned to her and said gently, "Don't hide your wings. Even feathers that fall still carry the wind." Since then, she chants fully, not to be heard, but to be whole. You find a smooth stone on the ground and sit down beside the path, watching the sparrows flutter and chase one another through the garden. One of them lands close, perhaps curious. Its eyes glint in the sunlight. It takes a few quick steps forward, then a sudden jump into the air, gone in a blur of motion and confidence. You realize how rarely you move like that with trust, with instinct, without second guessing. You start to wonder, where in my life have I clipped my own wings out of fear of judgment? It's not a harsh question, just a gentle knocking on a door you didn't know was closed. There's a Zen saying, "Be as you are, and not as you were told to be." It sounds simple, but it can take a lifetime to remember how. The sparrows go on being sparrows. They don't overthink their joy. They don't compare flights or measure their success in how far they go. They just go up, over, across the garden, then back again, a cycle of freedom performed without planning. You begin to feel a lightness in your chest, a loosening around the breath. Maybe you, too, have been carrying the weight of perfection, the expectation to get everything right. Say everything gently. Be everything all at once. But the sparrows don't worry about getting it right. They only ask, is the sky clear enough? And if it is, they leap. You close your eyes for a moment and feel your own breath as flight rising, falling, light on the edges. You imagine what it would be like to move through your life without apology, not with arrogance, but with grounded ease, to speak not because you've rehearsed, but because the words are ready, to rest not because you've earned it, but because you're tired, to be kind to yourself, not because you've fixed everything, but because you are already worthy. A breeze stirs the branches overhead, and a feather floats down a small one, gray and white, soft as breath. You catch it gently in your hand. It weighs nothing, and yet it reminds you of everything. You place it beside you, next to the stone, and simply sit. No need to do anything just yet. No list, no step by step, just you, and the birds, and the wind between them. The sky is wider than you remembered, and somewhere, in that quiet expanse, a part of you begins to stretch, uncurling like a wing after too long tucked close. You look toward the sun and ask yourself, what part of me is ready to take flight again? You walk again, feather in hand, until the path narrows into a corridor shaded by tall, old pines. Their trunks rise like pillars of a great, silent temple. The hush beneath them is gentle but deep, the kind of quiet that makes you smile for no reason other than the simple fact that it exists. A few needles fall as you walk. One lands on your shoulder and stays, as if accompanying you without needing to be noticed. Then, from somewhere ahead, laughter, not a chuckle or a smirk, but full-bodied, rolling laughter that spills through the trees like a warm current. Curious, you follow the sound until the path opens to a clearing, where a group of monks is gathered near the temple's outdoor wash station. In the center of them sits a monk you've never seen before, round-bellied, bright-eyed, and holding his sides as if he might split from joy. He laughs so hard he loses his balance and nearly falls into a bucket of water. The other monks giggle too, trying to remain composed, but the joy is contagious. Even the birds pause their chirping, as if watching with interest. You can't help it, you start to laugh too, and suddenly, the air feels lighter. The trees sway with a kind of approval. Something inside you shakes loose, the kind of release that doesn't come from answers or insights, but from that most sacred of Zen gifts, the reminder that awakening doesn't have to be so serious. The monk notices you and waves you over. Come, sit, he says, still catching his breath. Let's laugh before we forget how. You join him on the flat stone beside the wash basin. His eyes twinkle. You know, he says. There's an old story about a monk who laughed too loud during morning chanting. Everyone thought he had gone mad. He chuckles again, but when the abbot asked him why, he said, because the sky exists, and I couldn't help it. You smile at the simplicity of it. Of course, the sky exists. What more could one need? The Buddha taught, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. But sometimes that word isn't even spoken. Sometimes it's laughter that carries the peace, slipping past the intellect, past the stories we tell ourselves about how we must be. Laughter goes under all that. Laughter reminds us that even our deepest thoughts are just passing clouds in a very silly sky. The monk beside you picks up a ladle and pours water over his hands with exaggerated care, as though performing a sacred ceremony. Then he looks up, deadpan. Behold, the ritual of letting go. You laugh again. You learn that his name is Koji, and that he is often called the inappropriate monk for his irreverence. But the older teachers let it be. He teaches in his own way. They say, he sweeps not with a broom, but with joy. You think back to the version of yourself that walked into the monastery, the version burdened by questions, weighed down by the sense that wisdom must always be quiet, solemn, still. And now, here you are, laughing under trees because a monk nearly fell into a bucket. Isn't that also Zen? There's a teaching from a female Zen master named Shion. She once said, "Don't confuse stillness with stiffness. The river flows, and so must joy." She used to tell jokes during meditation. At first, students resisted, then they relaxed, then they listened, then they began to wake up. Koji begins to tell you another story, this one about a time he sat on a bee during walking meditation and couldn't scream because he was supposed to be silent, so I danced instead. He says, grinning. The abbot thought I had reached a state of spontaneous liberation. You snort. The sound surprises you. You hadn't realized how quiet you'd become, how careful, and while there is beauty in silence, sometimes the medicine is in the sound that breaks it. You ask him quietly, is it okay to be this unrefined? Koji raises one eyebrow. Who told you needed refining? His gaze softens. Enlightenment doesn't mean becoming a statue. It means remembering the part of you that never needed fixing. He leans in slightly. Even the Buddha, I think, must have laughed now and then. Otherwise, why would we be gifted with such absurd, beautiful lives? He lets the silence hang for a moment, then cups water from the basin and splashes his face with a loud splat. See sacred act. He winks. You laugh again. The kind of laugh that loosens knots you didn't know were tangled. You sit with him a while longer, not in deep conversation but in shared presence. The laughter fades into a warm quiet, the kind that follows only after something real has been expressed. Koji sighs and looks up through the trees. Do you know, he says, there are monks who chase insight their whole lives and miss the moment when joy knocks on the door and says, Tag, you're it. You nod slowly, understanding now that joy is not the opposite of awakening. It is a form of it, not the loud kind, not the constant kind, but the simple, bright warmth that rises when you stop guarding your heart so tightly. You rise, bow slightly, and begin to walk away. Koji doesn't follow. He stays by the basin, gently humming a tune that has no melody, but somehow lifts your step. The trees feel lighter now. The path ahead seems playful, alive, and within you, a quiet echo of laughter remains not loud, not demanding, just present, like a small lantern flickering gently in your chest. You breathe and ask yourself softly, have I mistaken solemnity for sincerity? And what joy might arise if I stopped trying so hard to be wise? The trees part once more as the path winds toward the monastery's outer edge. The air changes, suddenly less scented with incense and pine, more wild, more open. You hear the distant hum of bees, the creak of bamboo leaning in conversation, and somewhere, the gurgle of a small stream winding through unseen stones. As you follow the slope, a low wooden gate comes into view, one you haven't seen before. It's old but well tended, its hinges smooth, the frame slightly curved like an arching back in reverence. What's strange is that the gate has no wall on either side. It simply stands there, alone, surrounded by wildflowers and wind. You pause. There's something gently absurd about a gate with no fence. And yet, you feel drawn to it. You walk up to the gate and notice a weathered sign hanging beside it. 3 characters are carved into the wood, softened by time, the door that opens both ways. You smile, of course. This is no ordinary gate. This is a Zen one. The Buddha once said, "In the seen, there is only the seen. In the heard, only the heard. In the sensed, only the sensed." This gate doesn't pretend to lead to anywhere in particular. It invites you to step through, not because it changes what's on either side, but because it changes you. You stand before it, considering, what do you bring with you in this moment? What weight presses against your back? You think of the things you've been carrying for so long, the roles you try to play, the masks you wear, the quiet ache to belong. Then you step through, and nothing changes. The sky is the same. The breeze continues. The grass moves as it did before, and yet, inside, you feel it. A small shift, not dramatic, not grand, just a release, like you've stepped out of one version of yourself and into a slightly truer one. A woman appears on the far side of the field, walking slowly with a basket on her back. Her robes are faded but graceful, her pace measured, her eyes serene. She nods at you as she approaches the gate from the other side. Most people ask which side is the right side, she says with a smile, but the gate doesn't care. She pauses at the threshold. It only asks, "Are you present as you pass through?" You nod, unsure whether you've passed any kind of test, but also sensing there wasn't one in the first place. She steps through with the same ease, and the breeze picks up for just a moment, lifting the edge of her robe. She continues walking without looking back, disappearing down a trail marked only by the shape of bent grass. There's an old tale of a monk who came to a temple seeking to enter a long period of solitary retreat. The teacher pointed to a door and said, "That leads to the path of stillness." The monk asked, "And when I'm ready to return?" The teacher smiled. "Then the door will open the other way." The lesson is simple, yet so often forgotten. True practice is not about retreating from the world or merging into it. It's about remembering you can step between these states with grace, that the door of the self is meant to swing freely, not lock shut. You sit by the gate for a while, watching the grass bend and lift again. The gate creaks occasionally, as if speaking in a language older than words. You wonder how many people have stood here, hesitating, unsure if they were worthy of walking through. How many turned back, how many rushed ahead, expecting transformation, only to find the same world waiting on the other side. And yet, there's something tender in this truth. Enlightenment is not elsewhere. It is always here. The gate does not transport you. It reflects you. There's a Zen poem carved into a stone near the base of the gate. No traveler enters twice. For each step, the self dissolves. Forward is not onward, but inward. You rest your fingers against the wood and feel the smooth grain, worn by countless hands. You wonder what it might feel like to live each day as though passing through a gate, not to arrive, but to renew, not to escape, but to awaken. And suddenly, the wind shifts. You hear the distant chime of a bell, lunch, perhaps, or maybe just a bell being a bell. You rise slowly, Bow to the gate and begin walking again, not away from it, not beyond it, but with it, inside you now, like a doorway you can carry, one you can return to whenever you forget that you're allowed to begin again, no matter how many times you've stumbled. You walk with a soft question humming in your chest. What would life feel like if I trusted the door inside me to open both ways into solitude and into connection, into stillness and into sound, into knowing and into not knowing? The path leads you down a gentle slope toward a grove of camellia trees, their blossoms heavy with color petals soft as silk and glowing in the midday light. Bees hum nearby, their buzz like a slow chant, weaving through the branches without rush or distraction. You move past them with a kind of reverence, careful not to disturb, aware that this moment, like the petals, is delicate by nature. Just beyond the grove, a small tea house stands with its doors open. Inside, a low table, 2 cushions, and a single teapot rest in quiet invitation. A monk sits beside it, middle-aged, calm, with a slight frown that's more concentration than concern. You enter with a bow, and he gestures for you to join him. You sit. He begins pouring tea, but there's something odd. He doesn't stop. He fills your cup to the brim, then keeps pouring. Tea spills over, onto the table, onto your robes, warm and confusing. You pull your hands back instinctively. He sets the pot down without apology, like your mind, he says. You stare at the overflowing cup, tea pooling around its base like a puddle of old worries. You came with answers, he continues, so there is no room for the teaching. You feel a blush rise, not from embarrassment, exactly, but from recognition. This is one of the oldest Zen stories. A scholar visits a master, eager to understand the way. He speaks of all his knowledge, his theories, his previous spiritual insights. The master serves him tea and never stops pouring. The scholar protests. You've overfilled it, yes. The master replies, and your mind is the same. First, empty your cup. The Buddha taught, in a person who is humble, who is free from arrogance, the mind settles like clear water. But humility is not weakness. It is spaciousness, the willingness to admit, I don't know, the courage to let go of what you think you understand, just long enough to truly listen. You take a cloth and begin gently wiping the spilled tea, not hurried, not ashamed. The monk nods. Better, he says, and begins pouring again, this time stopping just as the liquid kisses the rim. You sip. It's good, smooth, slightly floral, grounding. He asks, why did you come here? You think for a moment, not the polite answer, not the one about curiosity or stress relief or spiritual growth, something deeper, rawer. I wanted to stop hurting, you say quietly. He nods. And so you brought your pain here with you, like a packed bag. And now, you're asking me to give you peace, but there is no space. The words aren't harsh. They're true. You feel them the way you feel. A breeze cut through heavy air. You glance at the teacup again, a small thing, and yet, it now holds so much meaning. How many times have you asked for change while still gripping everything that keeps you the same? You exhale, slow and steady. The monk sets his own cup aside and retrieves a small piece of charcoal. On a slip of rice paper, he writes a single character and slides it toward you. Me. No. The great no of Zen. Not rejection, not refusal. Emptiness. No thing, no concept, no clutter, no clinging. This one word used in many koans is not a door slammed shut. It's the space that opens when you stop crowding yourself with ideas, expectations, and polished identities. It is the space where something real might begin. You trace the character with your fingertip. Simple, stark, enough. A story returns to your mind of a laywoman named Hana, who spent years studying texts, attending teachings, reciting sutras, but one night, after yet another long session of chanting, she sat alone and cried, not from sadness, but from the sudden realization that she had built a fortress of understanding around her heart. So she stopped reading, stopped reciting, and for a year, she simply listened to wind, to people, to silence, to the taste of food on her tongue. I learned more in that year of unlearning, she said later, than in all the scrolls I had memorized. You look up from the paper. The monk is sipping quietly again, content, and in that space between the sips, something opens in you, not dramatic, not even particularly clear, but soft, a sense that perhaps not knowing is a doorway, not a dead end. You feel your shoulders release, a small, almost imperceptible letting go. What if wisdom isn't in collecting more? What if it's in releasing the need to collect at all? You finish your tea. The cup is empty now, truly, but in your chest, there is more space than before. You bow, not out of formality, but because your whole body wants to say thank you. The monk nods. Come back when your cup is full again, he says with a soft smile. We'll spill it together. You leave the tea house and step again into the sunlight. The wind catches your sleeve like a companion reminding you to walk with lightness. As you return to the path, the question comes not demanding, not heavy, just present. What am I holding on to that no longer serves me, and who might I become if I set it down? The wind has shifted again. It's softer now, like a breath whispered from far away, carrying with it the faint scent of sandalwood and pine needles. You walk slowly, the path winding through tall grass and low stone walls, until you reach a wide opening in the landscape. Ahead, a great bronze bell hangs beneath a wooden pavilion, its curved roof held up by thick, weathered beams worn smooth by generations of palms. The bell is massive, silent, and still, but its presence is unmistakable, even without sound. It speaks. You approach slowly, reverently. The ground beneath you is packed earth, soft and solid, like memory. A long wooden mallet rests nearby. Tied with a faded red cloth, you reach out and touch the bell's surface. It's cool and textured, with etched symbols spiraling around its body like ripples on water. You pause, listening. Nothing, and yet you feel something. There's an old story of a temple bell deep in the mountains, where a monk would strike it just once at sunrise. People in the surrounding villages would stop what they were doing and listen, not because they were told to, but because they knew that single sound was a reminder of the present moment, not a command, but an invitation, a call, not just to wake, but to awaken. The Buddha taught, better than 1,000 meaningless words is one word that brings peace, and sometimes that word isn't a word at all. Sometimes it's a sound, a single, deep note that reaches where language cannot. You grip the mallet and lift it gently, letting it rest against the bell. You take a breath, long and full, and then swing it. The strike is slow and deliberate. Bun. The bell sings. The sound expands, Not quickly, but like light in fog, it doesn't rush. It blooms, it fills the space, the hills, the sky. It moves through you, low and resonant, and lingers in your chest like the echo of your own heartbeat. You close your eyes and just listen. Even as the sound fades, it leaves behind a strange kind of fullness, a resonance not heard, but felt, like something remembered from long ago. A nearby monk once told the tale of a lay practitioner named Sota, who would strike the bell each evening before bedtime. When asked why he did it alone, with no audience, he replied, "Because even if no one hears it, the bell still brings peace, and maybe, just maybe, the valley listens better than we do." You wonder now, what echoes have I left behind? What words have I spoken that still ring in someone's mind softly, perhaps painfully? The bell has gone silent again, but you still hear it, not with your ears, but with your body. The echo lives on, as echoes do. And you realize that words are like this too. A phrase said in anger, a compliment offered too casually, a silence that meant more than any speech. Each of these strikes the heart, and the resonance lingers long after. There's a Zen saying, when the bell is struck, the mountains bow. You feel that now, the invisible impact of sound, the unseen weight of speech, the sacredness of what leaves your lips. You sit beneath the bell's pavilion and breathe deeply. Around you, the insects have returned to their song. A small bird lands nearby, hops twice, then takes flight again. Life goes on, but you sit with the echo. You remember another tale, a woman who worked as a potter in a distant village. She had no teacher, no texts, but every morning, she whispered a blessing into the clay before shaping it. May this hold without breaking. Years later, one of her bowls was found by a monk who said it vibrated, even in silence. Perhaps the clay had remembered her words. You touch the bell once more. You feel not just the metal, but the lives that have touched it, the generations of hands, the quiet promises spoken near it. When you stand, your body feels taller, not because you've grown, but because you've remembered. Every word you say is a bell, every silence, too. As you begin to walk back down the path, you carry the sound within you. It lives in your chest, in your ribs, in the air that moves between each breath. The breeze seems to harmonize with it now. Even your footsteps feel like part of a rhythm. You wonder softly, what if I spoke less to be heard and more to create peace? What if I paused, like the bell, before I rang? You continue walking, the memory of the bell's deep echo still vibrating gently inside you, like a quiet hum in your bones. The path turns toward a wooded glen where shadows rest more deeply, and the sunlight filters through like golden mist. You find yourself slowing again, not out of fatigue, but in response to the stillness of the trees, as if hurrying here would be impolite. As you reach a bend in the path, you see them two monks walking ahead. Their robes are dusty from travel, and they carry bundles on their backs. One is older, his steps steady and deliberate. The other is younger, full of restless energy. Their conversation drifts back to you in fragments, soft voices wrapped in reflection. Just beyond them lies a river wide, shallow, sparkling in the sunlight. A narrow wooden bridge, half collapsed, stretches across, but it's unusable now. The monks stop at the bank, assessing the situation. On the same side of the river as you, a young woman in elegant robes stands nervously, glancing at the water. She clearly doesn't want to cross alone. The younger monk turns away. The older monk, without a word, steps forward, bows slightly, and lifts her into his arms. He wades slowly through the water, the current pulling at his robes, the woman clinging to his shoulders. When he reaches the other side, he sets her down, bows again, and continues walking. The younger monk, startled, rushes to catch up with him. You follow at a distance. For a while, they walk in silence. The wind stirs the trees, leaves dance above the path, and the sound of water fades behind. Then, the younger monk finally speaks. "Why did you do that?" he asks, clearly agitated. "We took vows not to touch women." The older monk glances sideways and replies simply, "I set her down at the river's edge. Why are you still carrying her?" You stop walking, struck by the words, not by their cleverness, but by their truth. How often have you carried something long after it ended? A moment of discomfort, a regret, a grudge, an argument, a judgment, someone else's story about you, etched deep into your own, like stones in your pack. They follow you not because they must, but because you keep picking them back up. The Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned, yet somehow, the mind convinces us we need to carry it all, as if resentment were a debt to be paid, as if judgment were a shield, as if bitterness made us wise. But now, watching these two monks disappear into the trees, you begin to understand. Compassion sometimes breaks the rules that rigidity makes sacred. Not out of disrespect, but because true wisdom lives in the moment, not the manual. You continue walking, and the image of the river lingers, not just the act of crossing, but the act of letting go after crossing. What if the heaviest weight you carry isn't the thing itself, but your unwillingness to set it down? There's an old story of a woman named Rika, a farmer's wife who used to walk to the village each week to deliver vegetables. On one visit, a merchant accused her of stealing, though she was innocent. The villagers whispered for months, years later, long after the merchant had moved away and everyone else had forgotten. Rika still crossed the street when passing his old stall. One day, a child asked her why. She stopped, blinked, and laughed. "I don't know," she said. "I suppose I've been crossing this street for so long. I forgot I didn't need to anymore." Letting go is rarely dramatic. More often, it's this quiet, this small, this internal. It's a shift of posture, a loosening of grip, a smile where you once furrowed your brow, a decision not to rehearse that old story again today. You find a smooth rock beside the trail and sit down. The trees sway overhead, and the wind carries the scent of the river back to you. You take a deep breath, then close your eyes. And in your mind, you picture your own burdens, those you're still carrying out of habit, guilt, fear, or simply momentum. You picture yourself standing by a river, and you set one of them down, just one, not forced, not dramatic, just placed gently on the riverbank. It doesn't vanish. It doesn't dissolve in sparkles. It just stops being yours to hold. The sound of the river, imagined or remembered, swirls softly in your mind. You smile. Not because everything has changed, but because you've remembered you can choose. The two monks are long gone now. The trees lean in slightly, like witnesses. You rise slowly, feeling the lightness not of having conquered anything, but of having released something that was never meant to be carried this far. As you step back onto the path, a question moves through you like water. What have I been carrying out of loyalty to a wound? And what might happen if I set it gently down, right here, right now? The path begins to climb again, winding gently upward through layers of pine needles and fallen leaves. Each footstep is quiet, like a punctuation mark at the end of a slow, thoughtful sentence. The air cools as you ascend, the trees thin, giving way to stone and sky. You reach a ridge, where the land opens like a held breath. Before you lies a wide expanse of mountain, the peaks layered in shades of blue and gray. The wind here is crisper, brushing against your cheeks and slipping into your sleeves like a curious visitor. You hear something, a faint sound, like your own name whispered across water. Then it comes again, an echo. You don't know what caused it. Perhaps a bird's call, perhaps your own breath, perhaps nothing at all, only the voice of the valley answering itself. You move forward and find a large, flat stone perfect for sitting. You settle onto it, legs crossed, hands in your lap. As the wind plays gently with your hair, the mountains are vast, their silence not empty, but full like a bowl turned upright, waiting to receive. In Zen, there is a saying, the 10,000 things return to the one. Where does the one return? You sit with this, not as a riddle to solve, but a presence to keep company. There's something about the way sound travels here, how a single noise, even a whisper, seems to stretch, to curl, to circle back in softened form. The echo is not a copy, it's a reply. You breathe deeply and think of how your own thoughts behave, how they shout inside your head, bounce off memory, amplify through emotion, and return to you changed, often louder, often distorted. The Buddha said, whatever a monk keeps pursuing with his thinking and pondering, that becomes the inclination of his awareness. You consider that. What have you been echoing? What stories do you tell yourself again and again until they feel like truth, even when they were never more than a fleeting sound? You close your eyes and listen more deeply. Another sound, a crow's cry, sharp and sudden, bounces off the cliffs, but by the time it returns to you, it's changed, softer, less urgent, more like a memory than a message. You begin to realize something simple, yet quietly profound. Your thoughts are not the problem. It's the way you listen to them, the way you shout back, the way you chase the echo instead of the source. There's a parable of a monk who sought peace by retreating to a mountain cave. Each day, he would sit in silence and listen, but the louder his inner thoughts became, the more unsettled he felt. One day, in frustration, he shouted at the mountains, "Leave me alone." The echo came back, "Leave me alone." And then, softer still, "Leave me." Finally, me. That last word hung in the air like a bell. Me. Who is the me demanding peace? Who is the me echoing fear? Who is the me you speak to all day long without ever really meeting? You sit quietly with that thought, not trying to answer, just listening. A breeze stirs, and with it comes the faint sound of a falling stone, maybe from a ledge above, or from a tree releasing its weight. It's unremarkable, and yet it ripples through the air, echoes briefly, then vanishes. Like so many moments in life, you open your eyes and gaze across the valley. You imagine every harsh word you've said to yourself, every judgment, every tight demand, every whispered unkindness echoing into this space and dissolving, returning not as punishment, but as silence. There's forgiveness in that, not as a grand gesture, but as a quiet return. A softer racing, a reset. You take another breath, feeling how the air flows through your ribs, Your shoulders, your arms, nothing stuck, nothing held too tightly. Maybe this is how the mind clears, not by force, but by allowing the echoes to fade without chasing them. You rise slowly from the stone and stretch, arms lifting into the sky. The wind catches your sleeves and makes them flutter like prayer flags. And as you begin to walk again, you don't try to fill the silence. You let it walk beside you. There's an old saying, when you speak to the mountain, wait to hear what speaks back. And today, the mountain answered with one soft word, listen. As you step forward, a question returns like an echo in your own chest. What part of me have I mistaken for truth? Simply because I've heard it repeat for so long. The trail weaves downward again, shifting from rock to soft soil, where your footsteps land without sound. Ferns spring up on either side, their delicate fronds trembling in the breeze as if bowing in welcome. The valley below beckons with a quieter kind of gravity, not pulling, but inviting. You soon come upon a small, lopsided structure tucked into the side of the path. It's an old storage hut, once used for tools, now seemingly abandoned. But inside, you see signs of recent use: a broom leaning against the wall, a water jug with condensation on its side, and a wooden bench by the open window where someone has been sitting. You step closer, drawn by the hush within, and find a young novice seated cross-legged on the bench, chin in hand, scowling at something in his lap. He doesn't notice you right away. Only when you shift your weight does he glance up. His eyes are tired, not from sleep, but from something heavier: expectation. It's leaking, he says with a sigh, holding up a wooden bowl. Every time I fill it, it empties. You nod, stepping into the hut. The bowl is old, cracked at the seam, patched several times with resin and cloth. Now, the patch has split again, and water seeps through slowly, drop by drop. I was supposed to offer this at the next ceremony. He says, it's the only thing I was in charge of. I tried everything. He looks down at the damp towel in his lap, defeated. You sit beside him, not to fix, not to advise, just to be there. There's an old Buddhist tale of a novice monk tasked with carrying water each day from a stream at the bottom of the hill. He used a cracked pot. By the time he reached the temple, half the water was gone. Embarrassed, he begged for a better pot, but his master only smiled and pointed at the path. Look at the flowers, he said, all along the trail. Wild blossoms bloomed where the water had dripped each morning for months. The other pot kept its water. Yours left beauty. The Buddha once said, give, even if you only have a little. But what if what you give isn't just effort? What if your cracks, your weariness, your slow leaking attempts are part of the gift? You gently take the bowl from the novice's hands and turn it in your own. The wood is smooth from use, darkened by age, and beautiful in its imperfection. One of the cracks glints faintly, as if holding the last of the sunlight. You place the bowl on the windowsill, where the light warms it. What if, you say softly, you didn't fix the leak? What if you brought it just as it is? He looks at you, startled, but it's broken. Maybe, you say, or maybe it's honest. You both sit for a moment, watching the slow drip of water slide from the bowl's base onto the stone floor. Drip, pause, drip. The sound becomes a rhythm, a kind of truth. You think of all the times you've tried to patch yourself, your tiredness, your softness, your past, trying to hold it together so that others might find you presentable, reliable, enough. But what if your leaks are part of the offering? There's an ancient practice of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, so that the cracks become part of the story, not something to hide. In Zen, this isn't decoration, it's revelation, the wound, honored. The novice exhales slowly, but they'll see it. You smile, yes, and maybe they'll recognize themselves in it. Outside, the wind lifts again, brushing the ferns, and a few petals drift through the open window, landing quietly on the bowl. You both watch them fall. No grand insight, no dramatic healing. Just this presence, shared. Eventually, the novice rises. I'll bring it, he says, quieter now, but clearer. He cradles the bowl as if it were something sacred, and perhaps now it is. You leave the hut together and part ways at the next bend, where the path splits between ceremony and solitude. You walk on, the rhythm of the dripping bowl echoing in your memory. You begin to feel the grace in your own leaks, how your limitations may not need repairing as much as honoring, the places where you soften, forget, tremble, feel. Those are not failures. They are your humanness made visible. You stop for a moment beneath a low tree and sit against its trunk, hand resting over your chest. A question rises, not heavy, but clear. What if being whole doesn't mean being unbroken? What if it means embracing what spills, too? You rise slowly from beneath the tree, brushing bits of moss and bark from your robe. The wind has calmed again, now barely more than a hush at your back. The forest path turns narrow here, lined with low brush and tall reeds. And as you walk, the light begins to change, dimming slightly, like the soft flick of a lantern wick being lowered. A clearing appears ahead. At first, you see only the water still, dark, perfectly round, a small pond tucked into the trees, its surface smooth as obsidian. You approach quietly, your breath instinctively softer, as if not to ripple it. Then, from the far side of the pond, you notice him, a frog. Perched on a flat stone, he is utterly still. You stop walking, struck not by his size or color, though he is a deep, earthy green, but by his silence. He doesn't shift or blink. He doesn't flinch, not even when a dragonfly buzzes close to his face. He simply is. You sit slowly on the opposite edge of the pond and mirror him, cross-legged, spine straight, hands resting on your knees. There is a Zen story of a monk who asked his teacher, "What is the state of perfect rest?" The teacher pointed at a frog beside the temple's water basin and said, "That." The Buddha taught, "Meditate, do not delay, lest you later regret it." But here, meditation is not a chore, not a duty, not something you must do. It is what the frog does, or rather, what he does not do. He is not striving toward stillness. He is stillness itself. You close your eyes and begin to follow your breath, not pushing it, not holding it, just noticing. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, like waves kissing the shore and pulling back again. In the quiet, thoughts rise what you need to do later, what someone said to you years ago, how your posture feels slightly crooked, but each thought is like a ripple, gentle, temporary, fading into stillness if you don't chase it. You open your eyes again. The frog hasn't moved. Not once. You feel something inside you shift, a realization, not of what to do, but of what not to do. You don't need to adjust the moment. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to hold your mind still like a lid on a pot. You simply return. Return to your breath. Return to your seat. Return to now. You watch as a single leaf drifts down from the tree overhead, spirals gently, and lands on the water's surface. The pond doesn't reject it. It holds the leaf without resistance, without commentary. The leaf floats. The water remains calm. That, too, is practice. You remember a story told by an elder nun who had once lived as a mountain hermit. My mind used to race, she said, even when my body was quiet. My thoughts would gallop, and now someone asked. She smiled. Now they walk beside me. Like dogs on a trail. I don't chase them. I don't kick them away. I just keep walking. You wonder, have I been trying to control my thoughts, or simply befriend them? You breathe again. Deeper this time. The frog blinks once, slowly, then returns to his stillness, as if to say, even this blink was part of the stillness. Nothing is separate. A soft wind moves through the reeds, creating the smallest of waves on the pond's edge. The leaf rocks gently. You do not try to stop it. This, too, belongs. You sit longer than you expected. Time fades. The tension in your shoulders releases, not all at once, but gradually, as though melting from the inside. Your brow softens. Your breath finds its own rhythm without needing supervision. You begin to understand that stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the absence of resistance. A question forms, not from the mind, but from somewhere deeper. Can I sit with what is, without needing it to change? The frog shifts now one leg, slightly, but not hurriedly, not dramatically. Then he settles again, a movement without disruption. You see it clearly now. Even stillness contains motion. Even rest can include breath. Blink, small tremble. The perfection lies not in freezing, but in accepting the natural dance of being. You feel grateful to this quiet teacher, this green monk with no temple, no title, no teaching beyond presence. You rise slowly, bowing slightly in the frog's direction. He doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. As you walk away from the pond, you carry a new kind of calm, not the brittle calm of forced peace, but the living stillness of a pond that holds leaves without fear, of a frog that teaches with one unbroken gaze. And in your heart, the question remains not heavy, not demanding, but patient and true. What might I learn if I stopped trying so hard to change what is, and instead let stillness teach me how to see it? The path meanders through a narrow patch of silver grass, its feathery tips swaying in the soft breeze like waves across a field of dreams. You walk slowly, without a destination, your steps quieter than your breath. The light has begun to shift cooler now, touched with the blue of late afternoon. Shadows stretch long and thin along the path, gently reminding you that the day is growing older. As you follow the curve of the land, something catches your eye. Tiny white crystals glisten along the edges of the stones ahead, sparkling like stars fallen to earth. You bend down and touch one, its frost, thin, delicate, resting on shaded rocks as though laid there by the soft hand of a sleeping sky. The air is cooler here, and you wrap your robe more tightly around you as you continue. The trail rises gently and opens to a small overlook, a simple wooden bench facing east, the perfect place to sit. You do, letting your eyes wander across the valley below, the landscape tinted with the quiet tones of dusk. And there they are. Footprints, not far from where you sit. On the frost-covered earth, two sets of footprints trail off toward the edge of the overlook. One set is large, the other small. Their shapes are delicate, already beginning to fade as the sun warms the ground, but they remain evidence of a moment, a walk, a story. You close your eyes and imagine them a teacher and student, perhaps a parent and child, two pilgrims walking before dawn. Did they speak, or did they move together in silence, like breath and body? There's a Zen phrase, leave no trace. But here, you realize it's not about absence. It's about intention, to walk gently, consciously, knowing that even your softest steps make an imprint. The Buddha said, "Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think, and yet, in this moment, you sense that what you do with your feet, your hands, your breath, these, too, shape the world." A memory surfaces, one you haven't visited in a long time, a time when you rushed out of a room in frustration, slamming a door behind you. No one spoke of it, but the air felt heavier for hours. You didn't mean to leave that trace, but you did. Now, here in the hush of frost and evening, you understand how traces are not just physical. They live in glances, in pauses, in unspoken words. The frost shows you even what melts was once real. You reach out and gently press your fingertips into the icy grass, just for a second. When you pull away, the impression lingers. You watch it fade. There's a story about an elderly Zen nun named Kaide who would walk the temple grounds every morning at dawn. Her steps were so light they barely disturbed the dew. One day, a novice asked how she moved so gently. She replied, "I imagine that everything I touch is already broken, and I want it to know I was kind to it anyway." You gaze again at the footprints. One set turns back. The other continues to the very edge of the overlook. Then both disappear. You wonder, do we ever know which step is the last one we'll take with someone? It's not a morbid thought, but a reverent one. Each footprint is sacred. Each moment together, even the ordinary ones, leaves something behind. You think of the people who have walked beside you, some for years, some for moments, some who are still with you, some who've gone on ahead, and you feel a quiet stirring of gratitude, not loud or dramatic, just present, like warmth from the last rays of sun on your face. You rise from the bench and begin to walk again, slowly, carefully, aware of each step. The frost crunches slightly beneath your feet. You pause and look back. Your own footprints trail behind you, now soft, imperfect, slowly fading. And yet, they were here. You reach the edge of the path, where a low stone marks the end of the overlook. You sit once more, this time on the ground, watching the sky shift from pale blue to soft lavender. You let the wind carry your thoughts, and you ask yourself, not with urgency, but with quiet curiosity, what kind of footprints am I leaving behind, not on the ground, but in the hearts of others? The sun has dipped just beneath the rim of the hills, leaving behind a hush the world seems to understand without needing to speak. You rise slowly from the overlook, brushing frost from your robes, and begin walking again downhill now, toward the heart of the monastery. The light has thinned, and in its place comes something quieter, something more inward. As you round a bend, a low stone wall appears to your right, partially covered in moss. Behind it stands a humble wooden structure smaller than the main halls, quieter than the tea rooms. The door is ajar, as if left so by a breeze. Something pulls you toward it. You step inside. The air smells of cedar, ink, and time. On the back wall, hung in reverent simplicity, is a scroll, a single piece of parchment, aged but intact, and upon it, carefully brushed in black ink, is a handwritten note, the final letter of a master. You draw closer, reading the strokes as they arc across the page, both bold and delicate, alive in a way that only something written near the end of life can be. Nothing remains. Everything is here. The sound of rain is enough. If you find me missing, I am laughing with the wind. There is no name, no signature, only this soft farewell from a teacher who understood something most of us resist, that presence is not tied to form, that a life well lived may disappear without leaving a trace, and yet still echo forever. The Buddha once said, "This body is not me. I am not limited by this body. I am life without boundaries." You feel the truth of that here, not as philosophy, but as presence. This teacher is gone, and yet not. Their words live. Their laughter lives. The rain they loved is still falling somewhere. You sit on the wooden floor, the scroll above you, and let your breath settle. You imagine the final moments of that teacher's life. No fear, no regret, just soft surrender. Maybe they were sipping tea, maybe watching the moon, maybe sleeping when they passed. But whatever their final moment was, it seems they had no need to cling. There's a Zen story of a monk who, when asked what he wanted written on his gravestone, replied, "Used completely." He smiled, "Let the wind have the rest." Used completely, not wrung out by struggle, but fully offered, every breath given, every step placed with care, every word measured not by eloquence but by kindness. You gaze at the scroll and realize the best teachings don't arrive when someone speaks. They remain when someone is silent. There's another tale, a young monk who discovered an old parchment hidden behind a loose temple stone. It contained only one word. Yes. No context. No explanation. He asked the abbot what it meant. The abbot smiled. "It means the master agreed with life." You stay seated a while longer, not seeking answers, just soaking in the soft presence of the space. The ink on the scroll is faded, but strong. You can almost hear the brush touching parchment slow, steady strokes made with a hand that had no hurry. Eventually, you rise. Outside, the sky has deepened to a dark velvet, and stars have begun to prick through its surface. The path is dim now, but your feet know the way. You walk slowly, thinking not of endings, but of offerings. What would your letter say if you knew no one would read it? Would it be a whisper, a prayer, a joke? Would it be a single word? Like, yes, a cool wind brushes your cheek, and for a moment, it feels like someone is laughing with you, not at you, not about you, but with you, from somewhere just beyond the trees. You breathe it in. Then, softly, a question arises, not one that demands an answer, only one that wishes to be heard. If I were to disappear tonight, what trace of kindness would I want the wind to carry? The path curves again, winding into the folds of evening. You walk beneath trees that seem to lean a little closer now, their branches swaying as if whispering goodnight to the stars. The air has thickened slightly with dew, and your footsteps feel more grounded, more present, each one a soft imprint of being. Ahead, a faint light flickers through the mist. You follow it until you reach a tiny stone hut perched against the slope of the mountain. Its walls are simple and unadorned, but a soft glow spills from its small window, warm and inviting. There's no sound, just a stillness so complete it feels alive. You knock lightly on the frame, though the door is already open. Inside sits a nun, wrapped in a shawl of indigo cloth. her eyes closed, her hands folded gently in her lap. She doesn't look up as you enter. There's no need. She has already sensed you, not with her eyes, but with her presence. You bow, and she gestures with a single hand for you to sit. The floor is cool stone. You settle into a cross-legged seat, noticing the small details, the candle burning low beside a cup of tea, the faint scent of jasmine in the air, the rhythm of breath that seems to echo in the room, though no one is speaking. Then she opens her eyes. They are soft and clouded. She is blind, and yet she sees you. Not your face, not your clothes, not your movements, but something deeper, something quieter, as though your thoughts and breath were made of light. She speaks, her voice like a slow river. Most people only listen for what they already expect to hear. You nod slowly. I listen beneath the silence, she says. The Buddha once said, silence is full of answers, but this is a kind of silence few ever reach, not the absence of noise, but the presence of stillness, a silence so deep, it carries sound like an ocean holds a single drop. You sit with her and breathe. No words pass between you for a long time. The candle flickers. The mist moves outside the window. A cricket chirps somewhere in the dark. And still, she listens. Then she speaks again, but not to fill the silence, only to honor it. When I lost my sight, she says, I began to hear the world as it truly is. The rustle of robes carries emotion. The wind changes with intention. Even the pause between footsteps tells me what someone is afraid of. You say nothing. She smiles. You're not afraid tonight, only tired of speaking. You breathe in, deeply. It's true. In your mind, the noise still swirls old thoughts, unfinished conversations, moments that clamor for attention. But here, in this quiet room, it all begins to settle. You remember a story of a hermit who carved out a small cave high in the mountains. Each morning, she would rise before dawn and sit. Birds would call, winds would howl, storms would rage. But she said the loudest thing she ever heard was the thought she couldn't stop repeating to herself, I am not enough. It took her years to notice that it wasn't true. It was just loud. The nun turns her face slightly toward you. When the silence beneath the silence speaks, she says, it never uses fear. You wonder, how much of what I hear in my own mind is just an echo of fear? And what truths have I missed beneath that noise? She pours tea slowly, carefully. Her hands steady despite the blindness. She offers you a cup, and you take it with a bowed head. It's warm, fragrant, unfamiliar, but comforting. As you sip, she speaks one final time. The silence doesn't need to be understood, she says. It only needs to be trusted. You stay seated long after the tea is finished. The candle now a stub of wax. She returns to stillness, her breathing like a lullaby for the world. You rise silently and bow once more before stepping back out into the cool night. Outside, the wind has returned, but softer now, as if shaped by everything she left unspoken. You walk with slower steps, listening not just to the sounds around you, but to the silence between them. A distant owl calls once, the trees sigh, and beneath it all, a silence that does not press or pull, only waits to be noticed. You walk with that silence now, like a friend beside you, like a mirror that shows not your reflection, but your presence. And as you walk, you ask gently, what would happen if I let the silence speak before I did? The silence walks beside you now, like a companion who has always been there, simply waiting for you to notice. Each footstep falls with a kind of awareness that wasn't there before, not effortful, not forced, but curious. You've heard much today, and yet it is what you haven't heard that seems to echo most clearly. The path winds downward through a patch of moonlit trees, their leaves silvered by the light filtering through the canopy. You pass a lantern post unlit, but standing tall like an old sentinel, and follow a small trail toward what appears to be a courtyard. It's empty at first glance, but as your eyes adjust, you see him. A monk, not seated, not walking, not sweeping. He's standing near the center, broom in hand, brushing the ground slowly, even though there is no dust to be seen. You watch him for a while, not interrupting. The motion of the broom is fluid, calm, rhythmic, almost meditative. One sweep, pause, another sweep. His eyes remain soft, unfocused. He's not cleaning, he's practicing. You step forward gently. He glances up, smiles, and nods in greeting. You bow, and he returns to his sweeping. "Excuse me," you say softly. "There's nothing there." He stops, broom still in hand, and looks at the empty stone tiles, then back at you. "Is there not?" he replies, with a smile that carries no challenge, only invitation. You watch more closely. The tiles gleam faintly in the moonlight. They are spotless, no leaves, no dirt, no marks. And yet he continues. He gestures for you to sit on a nearby bench. You do. "This was once a place of great turmoil," he says quietly, as he moves the broom again across an already clean space. Disputes, misunderstandings, grudges between teachers and students. He stops, looks at the stone, but the dust wasn't in the courtyard. It was in us. You understand. He is sweeping not the floor, but the mind. The Buddha taught, just as a rainstorm clears the air, a well-directed thought clears the heart. But here, it is not a storm that cleanses. It is a broom moved gently by intention. The monk speaks again, every morning and every night. I sweep the dust that isn't there, because it always comes back, not from the trees, from the mind. You think of your own dust, the invisible accumulation of small annoyances, worries, judgments, the things no one sees, but that coat the inner floor until your joy feels dull, your presence scattered. A woman once came to this monastery long ago. The monk tells you she was quiet, never complained, always did her chores, but her face held the tension of someone fighting a war no one could see. The abbot, old and wise, handed her a broom and said only, "This sweep the place you think is already clean." So she did. For hours, she swept the meditation hall, then her own room, then the walkways, and when she finished, she sat down and wept, not because the monastery had needed her effort, but because she'd realized how much had built up inside her. You watch the monk now with new eyes. Each movement is an offering, each sweep a prayer, not to fix anything, but to remember, to return to simplicity. You rise and ask gently, "May I try?" He bows slightly and offers you the broom. You take it. It's heavier than it looks. The wood is smooth from many hands. You place it to the stone and begin to sweep. At first, it feels odd, like pretending, but with each motion, something begins to release. One sweep, pause, another sweep. Your thoughts slow to match your body. You stop planning. You stop reviewing. You just move the broom. And in doing so, something lifts. not leaves, not dust. But the feeling that you must always be doing something important, you understand now it's not about the floor. It never was. It's about the mind, about practicing presence, even when there is no task, about showing up, even when there is nothing to fix. The monk nods approvingly as you finish and hand the broom back. Tomorrow, he says, there will be more dust, even if no one walks here. You bow. He smiles, so I sweep, not because the floor needs it, but because I do. As you walk away from the courtyard, the moon rises higher, casting light across the path ahead. The night is deeper now, and yet you feel lighter. You let your hands brush along the leaves as you pass them. Each touch is a little more intentional, each breath a little more even, each step a little more rooted in the ground you've just helped sweep. And as you walk, the question comes again, like the soft whisper of a broom across stone. What part of me am I ready to clear, even if no one else sees the dust? The path now leads you away from the inner monastery grounds and into the gently sloping woods beyond, where lanterns grow fewer and the air feels wilder, more open. The moon hangs low and round, casting silver light across the mossy stones and tree trunks. Shadows flicker softly with every breeze, as if the night is exhaling in slow, rhythmic waves. You follow the trail until you reach a narrow opening between rocks. Stepping through, you find yourself in a small, hidden glen, walled by tall trees and the soft sound of falling water. A waterfall spills in thin ribbons over a cluster of dark stone, lit faintly by the moon. It's not grand, just a gentle cascade, like a quiet thought trickling through a deeper stream of awareness. And there, dancing among the shadows, tiny flickers of light, fireflies. They hover near the base of the waterfall, blinking softly, without urgency or reason. Some float lazily through the air, others perch on leaves and reeds, pulsing like miniature stars with no schedule to keep. You sit on a low rock, your body wrapped in the hush of the forest, watching the glow drift like breath in the dark. You've heard teachings in words, in silence, in the sweep of brooms, in the weight of empty bowls. But here, under the trees with water and fireflies, the teaching comes through contrast, through light and shadow moving together. There's an old Zen phrase: the bright moon and the dark pines share the same sky. It reminds you that illumination does not need to eliminate mystery. Light is not here to banish darkness. It dances with it. The Buddha said, "Those who see with insight are not deceived by appearances." And here, the insight is simple, almost childlike. The light you're drawn to tonight exists only because of the dark that holds it. You watch the fireflies for a long while. They don't glow constantly. Their light appears, disappears, reappears, and yet you never doubt they are there. You do not call them broken. You do not judge their flickering. You wonder what would it be like to trust your own light that way. There's a story told of a Zen gardener who used to lead guests into the temple grounds at night. He wouldn't carry a torch. Instead, he'd guide them by watching the fireflies. Some visitors were afraid, others impatient. But the gardener would say, "When we stop needing to see everything, we begin to see what matters." He once sat by this very waterfall with a novice who asked, "How will I know when I've awakened?" The gardener pointed to a single firefly. "You just did." You close your eyes now, listening to the water. Its voice is unbroken, continuous, not loud, but certain. The fireflies drift nearby, one passing just before your closed lids, glowing golden for a moment, then gone, In that instant, something inside you softens a tension you didn't know was still clenched. You've spent so much of life chasing clarity, wanting answers, wanting understanding, wanting a flashlight to show you the whole path ahead. But perhaps the glow of the firefly is enough, not to see everything, but to see just this step. You breathe deeply. The water falls. The fireflies blink, and your mind grows quiet, not from silence, but from surrender. You open your eyes again. The waterfall gleams in the moonlight, surrounded by tiny orbs of light. You feel no need to move, no need to decide anything. Just being here is more than enough. There's another story. A young girl in a nearby village who believed fireflies were spirits of ancestors watching over her. Every summer, she'd sit quietly in the fields, whispering her thoughts into the night. Her grandmother once asked if they ever answered. She replied, "They blink yes." You smile. Maybe the world is always blinking yes. Even when we feel unsure, even when the way forward is dim, even when the mind flickers between faith and doubt, there are quiet lights guiding us, not because they shout, but because they simply glow. You rise slowly from the rock. A firefly hovers close to your shoulder, blinking softly. You don't try to touch it. You simply watch and let it lead your next step. The trail is dim as you begin your walk back, but something in you has changed. You no longer need to see the whole path, just the part lit by the next flicker of kindness, presence, or trust. The fireflies disappear behind you, but the memory of their glow lingers. Like warmth left in your chest after a kind word, you carry it with you now, like a lantern made not of flame, but of understanding. And as you walk, a question joins you like a companion. Can I allow clarity to come in flickers, and trust that each soft light is enough to guide me home? The forest path winds gently downhill now, as if easing you toward the monastery's quiet center. The wind is softer than before, not quite still, but hushed like it, too, is preparing for rest. Overhead, the moon continues its patient arc, glowing like a polished pearl across the ink-black sky. Your breath moves in time with the world, slower now, deeper, more certain. The trail widens once more, and soon you return to the familiar courtyard. It looks different under moonlight, less structured, more dreamlike. The stones gleam faintly with dew, and a lantern flickers beside the meditation hall, casting long shadows that stretch and breathe along the walls. You step inside. The room is nearly empty, just mats on the floor, a single candle, and the sense that others have sat here long before you, searching, resting, dissolving. You take your place on one of the mats and sit quietly. Your spine rises with intention. Your shoulders soften, and your hands come to rest in your lap. The candle flickers before you, its flame small but steady. This is the last teaching of the night, and it does not come from a story or a word. It comes from what is already here. Stillness. You sit within it now, and it sits within you. The Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." But this isn't about withdrawing from the world. It's about finally realizing that the calm you seek was never locked away. It only waited for you to slow down enough to feel it. You remember the gate you stepped through earlier, the overflowing teacup, the bell's echo, the frog's stillness, the cracked bowl, the fireflies, the blind nun's gentle words, the broom sweeping invisible dust. Each moment was a doorway, each one gently opened not with force, but with presence. The monastery has not given you answers. It has given you space. Space to see, to feel, to let go. You reflect quietly now, not with thought, but with breath. Inhale, exhale. You feel how full the silence is, how complete the moment becomes when you stop trying to improve it. A memory comes to you of someone who once asked what awakening felt like. The teacher had smiled and said, "Just this." They didn't explain. They didn't need to, because just this was enough. And now you understand, not intellectually, but in your body, this moment, this breath, this stillness, this ordinary quiet is not waiting to be replaced by something better. This is the teaching, and when the mind wanders, as it surely will, you'll remember the fireflies, flickers of light, not permanent, not predictable, but enough. You rise slowly, carefully, from the mat. The candle remains burning, steady and unbothered. You bow once before leaving the hall, your movement smooth, your heart light. Outside, the moon is high, and the trees have stilled. You walk one last time along the stone path leading back to your room. It feels like returning, but also like beginning, and maybe both are the same. Before reaching the threshold, you pause. You feel the earth beneath you, the night around you, the breath within you, and with a smile so small it's barely a movement, you ask, "Can I remember this peace tomorrow not as something rare or distant, but as something that was always quietly waiting for me to notice?" The path is behind you now, but its silence remains. Your body is warm beneath the blanket. Your breath is slower than before, and your eyelids grow heavier with each passing moment. You don't need to hold on to anything, not the teachings, not the stories, not even the questions. Let them rest like leaves settling at the bottom of a still pond. Feel the gentle weight of the day releasing from your shoulders. Every word spoken tonight is dissolving like morning mist. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing to fix. You are already whole, already home. The wind has softened into a whisper. The trees no longer sway. Even the fireflies have dimmed their glow, as if they, too, are ready to sleep. Your breath is the last movement now, rising and falling like the ocean under moonlight, quiet, deep, eternal. Let yourself float here. Let your thoughts melt into the pillow. Let your heart find stillness in the space between each breath. You've wandered far and gently, and now you are exactly where you need to be. No striving, no searching, only this hush, this peace, this perfect, fleeting now. May your rest be long, may your dreams be kind, and may the stillness walk with you, even when you wake.